way back in the ancient book of Malachi, a prophet levels this absolutely devastating charge against his own people, a charge of profound unfaithfulness. It's this intense confrontation about marriage, about identity, and about divine promises that, believe it or not, still echoes today. So, what can this ancient text possibly teach us about the very nature of betrayal?
Okay, so this right here, this is the verse that basically lights the fuse. I mean, can you imagine a prophet looking you right in the eye and saying this? It's not a gentle suggestion, it's a direct accusation. And Malachi isn't just talking about a broken promise between two people. He's saying a sacred covenant, with God himself as the witness, has been completely shattered. This one verse just sets the stage for everything that's about to unfold.
And this accusation is right at the heart of what our source material calls Malachi's third confrontation. It's one of these key moments where the prophet basically holds up a mirror to the people of Israel and forces them to take a long, hard look at their actions, and maybe more importantly, at their hearts.
You know, this source text for this uses a really powerful Norwegian word to get to the core of the issue, utroskap. Now, it translates to unfaithfulness, sure, but it carries so much more weight than that. It's not just about cheating, it's about being fundamentally faithless. It's about breaking a sacred pact. It's a betrayal on two levels at once, a horizontal one to your partner and a vertical one, straight to God.
So you have to ask, what was actually happening that triggered all this prophetic outrage? Well, it was a very specific social trend. The men of Judah were divorcing the very women they'd built their lives with, the wives of their youth, in order to marry younger, foreign women. Malachi saw this not as a bunch of personal choices, but as a societal sickness that was becoming spiritually catastrophic.
But here's the thing. This was never just about failing marriages. Malachi saw something much, much bigger and more dangerous at play here. He saw a full-blown identity crisis that was threatening the entire nation.
I mean, the stakes were incredibly high. This wasn't just some bad behavior. For Malachi, this was a rejection of who they were. By breaking the marriage covenant, they were symbolically shattering their national covenant with God. This one act threatened their unique culture, it invited foreign worship right into their homes, and it basically dishonored their entire history as a people who were supposed to be set apart.
And this brings us to another key term from the source, blandingskap, or mixed marriage. Now, we have to be super clear here. The concern in the Old Testament was not about race or ethnicity. It was entirely about religious and cultural identity. The ultimate fear was that marrying outside the faith would inevitably lead to assimilation and the worship of foreign gods.
And you've got to realize, Malachi wasn't just inventing a new rule here. He was tapping into a really deep-seated warning that you can hear echoing all throughout the Old Testament. As this quote from Deuteronomy shows, the command to remain spiritually distinct had been absolutely central for centuries. The driving force was always the fear of idolatry, the fear of turning away from their God.
So, right in the middle of this whole confrontation, Malachi drops one of the most famous and, frankly, famously debated verses in the entire Bible about divorce. And as we're about to see, how you translate it, well, it changes the meaning pretty dramatically.
Now, to really get why there's so much debate, the source gives us a fascinating piece of evidence. It shows 3 different Norwegian Bible translations of the exact same verse, Malachi 2:16. And the striking thing is, they don't all say the same thing, not even close.
So just look at the difference here. The 2011 version says the unfaithful man is the one who covers his clothes with violence. But then you've got the other two, where God himself is the one declaring, "I hate divorce." The original Hebrew is actually ambiguous, and it leaves this huge question. Is God stating his own feelings about divorce, or is he describing the violent, hateful nature of the man's actions?
But here's the crucial takeaway from all this, and the source makes this really clear. Don't get lost in the grammatical debate, because at the end of the day, whether God is the one hating or the man is the one acting hatefully, the verdict is exactly the same. This specific act of divorce in this context is being condemned as something violent and treacherous. The core message is absolutely impossible to miss.
All right, so this principle of covenant faithfulness doesn't just end with Malachi. It actually evolves. It gets picked up and completely reframed in the New Testament.
And here you can see that fundamental shift so clearly. In the Old Covenant, the dividing line was national, Israelite versus foreigner. The big threat was idolatry. But in the New Covenant, that line gets completely redrawn. It's no longer about your ethnicity, it's about your faith, believer versus unbeliever. And the threat becomes the instability of building a life on a spiritually divided foundation.
And you know, the Apostle Paul just perfectly captures this new spiritual principle. His metaphor of an unevenly yoked team of oxen, it's so powerful.
Think about it. If two animals pulling a plow aren't of the same kind and strength, they can't work together. They'll just end up going in circles. Paul applies this idea to a life partnership, arguing that a shared spiritual foundation is absolutely essential if you want to move forward together.
So how does this journey through ancient history actually apply to us? Well, it raises this eternal question about marriage that remains deeply, deeply relevant for many people of faith today.
So how can we even think through this today? The source lays out a pretty clear path. First, you have to understand the original warning from Malachi. A divided spiritual core is a real danger. Second, you follow how the New Testament takes that warning and reframes it around a shared faith. And finally, you bring it into the present day by seriously considering how a shared spiritual foundation really impacts a lifelong partnership.
And so we're left with this challenge. In a world that often defines love as a feeling, one that can come and go, what can this ancient, rugged idea of a covenant, a promise that's meant to endure beyond emotion, what can it teach us? How does this concept of utroskap, this profound faithlessness, force us to re-examine what it truly means to be committed? That's a question really worth thinking about.